the wonderful River Trent. This is the Newark Dyke section of the Trent. So about a mile upstream, the Trent splits, it goes over a weir, and this is a little bit of a steadier version of the Trent, and the main flow goes round the back of Newark and rejoins again at a place called Crankley Point, which is today going to be a brilliant bream peg on that point, but that's a long way away from us. This is middle of the dike, this is peg 46, and I'm not too sure what we're going to get today. There's a little bit of extra water on. We could catch an odd bream, we could catch an odd chub. I think a barbel is unlikely, but I'm not going to say it's out of the question. The only problem we've got here is normally every peg has got these beautiful big stones on for you to fish from. The trouble is here, it's very, very shallow close in, so we're going to have to get the platform out and go a little bit further out, I think, and wade out. It's going to be feeder only for me. It's an any method match, but I think with this extra water on, the amount of big fish that's potentially going to feed, it's going to be feeder only. And like I say, bream are going to be the main target, but I'm not going to say no to a chub or a barbel if one comes along. Let's get a bit of gear out and then we'll walk through the approach for the day. Right then folks, we are about ready I think. Let's walk you through the peg and the approach. I've had a bit of a chuck around with a bomb. It feels like I've got a bit of depth across the far bank, and obviously the water's flowing from the left, it's coming round this bit of a bend, and you'd expect obviously with the flow hitting that far bank for it to be a little bit deeper, and that's what we've got. So it's about 30 meters wide. My main line is going to be 26 meters, so not very far from that far bank. I think I'm still in the full depth of the river there before it starts to shelve up a little bit. My main swim is going to be straight in front of me, in front of these reeds. Hopefully I can pull some fish up from these trees downstream, but I have set up a rod for chucking in that little hole just in case we're struggling or we need to go searching for fish. But I imagine it's going to be bream fishing here, and I think the bream are going to be a little bit more in open water. I don't think they're going to be hiding under trees today, especially with this extra colour in the water. I think if I have to go hunting under those trees, it's for an odd chub or maybe a barbel, but I'm not so sure there's many of those in this area. I think it's going to be all out bream. So let's have a look at the bait. Bait reflects this. Worms, casters, got a few maggots for hooking, a few spare casters there. A few maggots, but not loads. They're not even riddled off. Need to sort them out really. And also I've got a little bit of meat. I don't think you can come on this bit of the Trent without any meat. Seems to be a great bait for both bream and barbel. Ground bait is marine halibut, dynamite marine halibut, tiny bit of swim stim black, just to take the shine off it a little bit. So we've got a very breamy ground bait. I don't expect to be roach fishing or dace fishing today. That's mixed really heavy as well. Basically I've mixed it as if I was fishing the margins on a commercial. So added loads of water to it. It went almost to like a soup, and I just left it in the bucket while it all soaked in that water. Then I've had to bash it out and push it through a riddle. And it's very heavy, that's taken a lot of water. Kit wise, we've got 2 rods, both 12 footers. A lot of people come to the River Trent, or they hear about the River Trent and they feel like they need beach casters to fish the river. You don't. You know, this bit, granted, is a bit steadier than the rest of the river, but a couple of 12 footers and maybe a couple of slightly stronger rods for different sections of the river where there is a bit of pace. But I managed to do a lot of things with a 12-foot rod on this river. Like I say, if you're chucking to the far bank on the wider bits and it's very pacey, yeah, you're going to want a 13 or 14 footer. But most of the time, a 12-foot rod, nice soft 12-foot rod, is going to do the job. I've got £5 reel line on there. And I'm just playing around today with a braided shocker. So I'm going to be casting in quite a bit. I want to just see if the braided shocker catches the flow less than a mono shocker. But I've still got that thin 5-pound main line. I wouldn't want to cast in all day off that 5-pound main line. So I think a shock lead is important, but I don't want to use my normal 030 mono. So a little bit of braid as a shock leader up and down the rod. We'll see how that goes. Hooks wise, got a bit of a selection in here. Let's have a look. I think we'll be going for, let's have a look, I think 014 or 016. There's 016. 016 and a 14 feeder special, that'll be pretty good. Got series 18s here. Now I've had a chuck around and it seems silty. And I don't mind using a straight point hook on silty bottoms. If it was a gravelly, I'd want this in turn, because I feel that on a gravelly bottom, the point can get nicked a little bit with these straight points. But because it's silty, we might be going away with one of these straight point series 18s. But I think we want decent gear. 016, 014, 14 and size 12 hooks. Baits are going to be like bits of worm, double castor, double maggot, maybe a cube of meat, who knows. Let's have a look at this feeder selection. So I like these hex mesh feeders. I reckon 40 grams is going to hold out there. So we've got a range of sizes in those. We've got a little tiny Nisa there. He is very tiny. If I need to sort of like cut back on the bait, trick a few fish. Got bait up. That's only for if I want to put in maybe a bed of hemp somewhere. Again, can't envisage me doing that today, but it's always nice to have a bait up on the tray just to see what happens. Really simple. I don't think you need to complicate it too much. We've not got any block end feeders out. I've got some in my little case in there, but I don't think we'll be using a block end. I think it's all going to be ground bait work today with maybe a few casters, a bit of worm. Wish me luck.
You know what, I absolutely love the River Trent. It's one of my favourite places to fish during the summer. You just know that you're going to get bites. There's a lot of rivers that you go on, and some days, on those tough days, it is really tough. But you know, on the River Trent, you still get bites, you still catch fish. Even on the bad days, they're still pretty decent. So let's talk about the Newark Dyke. Now the Newark Dyke is a navigable bit of the old River Trent. So the old River Trent goes around Newark and the Newark Dyke goes through Newark. It is a slower, deeper bit of water. Now when I first started fishing these midweek matches, probably about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, a chap called Colin Walton used to run the matches. Great bloke, they were really professionally run, and he would just peg the Newark Dyke. So there'd be 30 blokes, 25 blokes, and we'd all fish along the Newark Dyke, 1 to 70, probably every other peg. And the weights, you sort of knew where you were. There'd be a few skimmer weights, maybe an odd barbel caught. The weights weren't generally on the high side. Move on a few years to present day, and the matches now are getting really well attended. You know, sometimes up to like 60, 70. We had 100 guys fishing last year on a couple of the midweekers. So that means that the organisers now, John Urity does an amazing job, and his little team of helpers does an amazing job in finding fish. We're on different stretches of river all around Newark. So there's some stretches of river at East Stoke, which is brilliant river fishing. There is Crankley, there's Windthorpe, Rolleston. There's some fantastic fishing, and what the guys do now is generally peg the river all over the place. So they try and fit in the good areas. Unfortunately, for those that are on the Newark Dyke, sometimes that means missing out on those bumper days. And these particular pegs that I'm fishing, unless it is a very, very good day, and unless there's some bream in the area, I just don't think you're competing with those flyer pegs at maybe Crankley Point or the early pegs at East Stoke, where there's been some barbel caught in the last few weeks. So my target is skimmers. Hopefully there's some bream there, but generally Newark Dyke, it's skimmer fishing. Maybe an odd rogue barbel. I've seen a couple of big barbel caught along these few pegs. I remember drawing next to Ali Henry a few years ago, and he caught 2 barbel in the cold, actually in the winter months. He caught 2 big barbel, double figure fish along this area, and also there might be an odd chub as well. So ground bait feeder to start with. I always like to start with ground bait feeder on the River Trent. You know that if you're gonna catch some bream early on, they're generally there. You can catch a couple earlier, you know you're in for a good day catching bream. So I like to start on a ground bait feeder targeting bream, and then maybe as the session goes on, if there's not many bream to target, or if you decide I'm targeting chub or dace or barbel, they love particles, I'll switch to maggot feeder and start feeding casters, hem, maggots, that sort of thing. So ground bait feeder to start with, nice bit of depth towards the far bank where that flow's hitting it, and I like to fish to a line clip, so I like to be accurate. I like to make sure I'm casting the same place all the time, and unless I'm targeting barbel at close range, I'll use a line clip just to know that I'm in control of everything. So this particular session, casting regularly, don't like to leave the feeder in the water for very long. Started with maybe a little bit of worm in the ground bait, a little bit of worm on the hook, single, double maggot, those smaller baits, trying to catch some skimmers. There weren't many skimmers around though early on. Small fish, odd little roach, odd little perch, but like I said before, even on a bad day on the River Trent, you get bites, there's fish to be caught. Terry Moraz, who's just downstream from me, he had a walk along. He told me the whole stretch is fishing poorly, this Newark Dyke stretch is fishing poorly. There was only, I think, 6 or 7 pegs along this little section. No one was admitting to more than 3, 4, 5 pounds, so it was a case of just taking what comes. I didn't feel like a big barbel was going to get me out of jail, so I keep plugging on a ground bait feeder, trying to put fish in the net, scaling down, single, double caster, resting the swim, going back onto it, chucking in different areas, you know, all the little tricks that you try and make a bite with. And eventually I get my chance. I get a skimmer. He's about £1.5, £2, and I'm thinking, here we go, this is the start of something. Take my time with my fish on the river. You never know whether you're going to snag up, whether a pike's going to take it. You never know how the hook hold is. You never know whether you're actually going to catch another fish, but you've got to take your time. Rod up high, away from any snags, any weed, safely in the net at last. I've plodded on, but unfortunately that skimmer was a lone ranger, and we didn't really catch much after that. I fancy maybe an odd bigger chub if conditions were a little bit better, but just wasn't meant to be. To show that we were in the wrong area, the match was won with £60. There were loads of weights over £20 from other areas of the river. Newark Dyke section was won with £8. Just don't think there's enough flow there and enough pace there to keep the fish happy at the moment. Obviously, when the water's warm, they want some extra flow on top of them. The fish want extra flow. It means oxygenated water. Hopefully, next time we draw one of those areas. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. A really brief summary of my match. I'm really itching to get back out on the River Trent. Hopefully, we catch a load more next time. Tight lines.